Well, good afternoon, all. It looks like we're about 3 after the hour, and want to get this started so that we don't delay. And we have a lot of great information to cover and a lot of great speakers. So really don't want to spend too much time taken away from them. So want to welcome you all on behalf of Colorado Livestock Association and express our gratitude for having you participate in the first session of our online webinar series. This is part of a fall reintroduction to the Colorado Livestock Association and what it is that we do here for you and the resources that we offer. And this is just one of the many sponsored by the Colorado Beef Council. So big thank you to them and Todd Inglee for being a part of that and helping make this happen and bring this all to fruition. We've got featured speakers today that include Todd Inglee, the Executive Director of the Colorado Beef Council, Julie Moore, who is the Director of Nutrition and Education over there at the Colorado Beef Council, Kate Schulz, that is Nutrition and Health Promotion Consultant for the Beef Council. And these speakers are going to cover many updates and numerous promotional opportunities, education, and research programs that the Beef Council is currently engaged in. We are very glad to have them on, and they are experts in their field. So feel free to dig deep on your questions and really make them scratch their brains. They know what they're doing and they enjoy a good challenge. So the final thing I wanted to mention was this is just the first of 3 online webinar series that we're going to be having. The next one will be Wednesday, October 12th. And that will feature a speaker from Cattle Facts. And we are very excited to have this series kicked off this week with Beef Council. And there is more information coming from us here at the CLA on future sessions that we will be offering. So stay tuned to our emails, our weekly blast, our social media. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for all the exciting news updates and things that we're doing here at the CLA. And I won't keep you any longer and kick it back over to Todd Inglee for your first speaker session. Thanks, Todd, and thanks, Beef Council, for all that you do for the industry.
Thanks, Zach. Appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and welcome everybody. It's fun to be able to be the first of your fall webinars. So appreciate that opportunity. I'm going to share my screen here and get things rolling. As Zach said, my name is Todd Inglee, with Executive Director of the Colorado Beef Council. We're going to just kind of give you an overview of the kind of the state of the beef market. I'm looking at consumer profiles, some of the national trends, state trends as far as consumption, retail, food service, and then go into some of our programming that we do with the Beef Council with your checkoff dollars to help address some of those issues and do what we do as far as promoting beef. So one of the first things I want to always cover in any of my presentations, I go over just a couple of the few basics of the beef checkoff. The checkoff program was established, funded, and governed by beef producers with USDA oversight. Colorado started its checkoff, its own state level checkoff program in 1965. And then in 1985, the national beef industry created its national program. And we started collecting dollars at the national level in 1987. So $1 is paid every time a beef animal is sold. It's also important to know that importers also pay $1 per head equivalent. It's truly a state and national partnership. All the programs that we do are centered around beef education, marketing, promotion, and research. We get a lot of questions sometimes about, people pay the $1 checkoff, and why don't calf prices reflect, this extra advertising and promotion that we do? Well, basically, we are federally restricted to doing demand driving programs only. So we cannot influence the market. We are a demand driver. Where does your dollar go? So for every checkoff dollar, 50 cents of it stays at the state level. The other 50 cents gets sent on to the Cattlemen's Beef Board for use at national level programs. And we do have USDA oversight. They oversee everything related to our budget, our marketing plan, messaging, anything like that. We also go through annual mandatory audits from an independent standpoint, as well as a national organizational standpoint. By law, we can't use checkoff dollars for lobbying, public policy involvement. We can't use any unfair, deceptive practices. We can't disparage other food commodity groups. We can't promote a specific brand or a trade name of any beef product without a special marketing agreement. And then everything that we do has to relate primarily to the end product. We can't talk about, live cattle production, like which breed is better than another breed, anything like that. We have to always talk about the end product. As I look at 2022, what are some of the biggest issues that the industry is facing? And as being responsible for promoting beef and creating demand, I see these are some of the biggest issues that we're facing here this year. Obviously, the market disruption caused by the pandemic, we're still feeling that. And I think, some of the inflation issues that we're facing with rising food costs and all that is all related back to the pandemic market disruption. We also are looking at social acceptance of production practices, getting consumers to accept what we do so they feel more comfortable in purchasing and consuming our product. Obviously, health and nutrition is big. There's probably been no other time, and there's been more attention faced, in our industry, looking through the lens of health and nutrition. And then international marketing, with so much value added to the carcass coming from low valued cuts being sent and marketed overseas. Over $400 per carcass is derived from international marketing. Of course, that's always a big item. So right now, I think I go into just kind of show you a little bit about beef demand, pricing, and consumption patterns. As we kicked off into this year, you look at consumer sentiment, and what consumer sentiment is, it's an economic indicator that measures optimism from consumers, how they feel about their finances and the state of the economy. As you can see, for this chart shows back from 1979 till just May of this year. Consumer sentiment is really low right now. Right now, in 2022, it's the lowest consumer sentiment level since 1952 when they started keeping these records. Obviously, that was primarily due to inflation. Let's say if you looked at from July of 2021 to July of 2022, food prices have gone up 11%. So that's a big thing. Consumer sentiment is low right now. If you were to ask consumers how they rank their protein sources, consumers rank their preferred protein sources in this level here. So beef is that orange, chicken is the blue, pork is the gray, and meat alternatives is that yellow. So as you look at that, it's obvious to see that during the pandemic, if you see there from July 2020 on the left of the screen, beef was king of the retail meat case. Obviously, consumers were loyal to beef as a protein. If you looked at their willingness to pay for beef products, different proteins here. So despite what this graph really shows is despite uncertainties with the broader economy, consumers still find value in purchasing beef. From 2019 through 2022, consumers' willingness to pay for steak rose $1.82 per pound. So that obviously shows that consumers find value in beef and they're willing to pay for it, which is good. So that's a good thing for the beef industry. Next, if we were to look at the per capita net beef consumption, I think it's interesting to look at even how low it got in 2014. From from the year 2000 down to 2014, the lowest it's been in a long time. You can see we've constantly been increasing since that time period. So it's, but we're still remaining strong. We're growing and remaining strong. I've seen some other forecasts that indicate by the end of 2022 that number may even reach up, past that 58% by one or 2 pounds. So anyway, that's always a good thing. Next, if we were to look at retail and food service, this graph shows growth in pounds of beef sold. So if you're to look at, and while all the other lines show an interesting perspective, especially through the pandemic, you can see the year that the last 2 years there where those trend lines have gone down. I think the big thing that I take away from this as I look at those last numbers on the far right, so that is June 18th of this year, comparing where we are this year versus the last 2 years. So what you can see here is that I think price is starting to have an effect on sales. So we're starting to not sell as many pounds as we did the last 2 years as of June 18th of this year. As you can see, between 2021 and 22, we're down 4% as far as pounds sold through retail. This next graph here shows the dollars. This is retail growth in dollars. And I think this proves what I was talking about before. Increased pricing is evident. As you can see, between 21 and 2022, our dollars, it's up 2%. So that just is showing that, prices going up, and that's having an effect on the volume of sales. If you were to look at now, if we're looking at food service, pre versus post-pandemic restaurant sales, I love this chart because I thought it was fascinating during the pandemic. It was crazy to see how food service was totally shut off, right? It had a huge impact and did cause a lot of supply chain issues. Having to resource product and resupply all those lines into retail away from the restaurant side. As you can see, it tanked pretty much 2020, but it has come back. So right now it's rebounding. July 2022, the monthly food service sales is registering at $86 billion. That's just for the month. That's up 12% from 2021. So that's positive. Food service is definitely bounding back. This slide kind of shows that in a little bit different graphic. The blue is retail, the gray is food service. So as you can see from 2020, food service was at 54.3% of beef sold in these two channels. 54% was sold through food service. And then you can see it's increasing a little bit more as we get into 2021, it's 60%. And I thought you would find this interesting. Excuse me. This graph shows beef products sold in restaurants. So you can see what is more popular, right? Hamburger, of course, hamburger and ground beef patties is the majority of what sells through restaurants. And you can see it kind of tapers down from there. But I think it's staying relatively steady with last year. And you kind of just see what actually moves in restaurant. Of course, e-commerce was huge during the pandemic. Grocery sales through e-commerce blew up. It was crazy. It's projected that e-commerce and grocery sales is going to account for 20% of all grocery sales by the year 2026. Online shopping increased 42% during the pandemic, and 63% of shoppers prefer home delivery. So when you look at all of those things, as marketers of beef, what we're trying to communicate and influence sales, that all of these things are elements that we need to take into consideration. And you look at this third-party delivery graph here, look at the amount, the volume of third-party delivery, how meal delivery actually increased during the pandemic. So those are things that we're all taking into account as we're looking at trying to influence demand. We can look real quickly at a consumer profile highlights. So we participate in a monthly consumer profile, And these are some interesting insights. Beef consumption in Colorado is on par, if not just slightly higher than the national average. 71% of Colorado consumers say they eat beef at least once per week. If we were to look at, so we know that that many people eat beef that frequently. So what about the future consumption? What is it? What are the reasons they would think about eating more or eating less? And I think there's a lot of information on this page. We can always provide these slides to you after our webinar. So if you want to look at these, definitely reach out, send me an email, and we can provide these to you. But I'm going to keep going through these pretty fast. We have a lot of material to cover today. But the reason to eat more beef, 13% of consumers would eat more beef because they enjoy the taste. So that shows that consumers value the taste, right? And reasons they would eat less, prices too. Prices is a big factor, of course. And I think it's interesting to look at the other reasons why they would eat less. And they're all, pretty close. Health, of course, comes into that, as well as their concern for beef production in the environment. So those are all things that we are looking at. Let's see, the next one shows what their perception between beef and beef production is. The graph on the left is the national average. The pie charts on the right are what Colorado measures. So I think what's interesting here, when you think of perception, this is their understanding of beef. So if you look at the positive, so nationally, 67% of consumers have a positive perception of beef, whereas in Colorado, 69% have a positive perception of beef. That's pretty good. We can always do better, but that's always good. And then if you're to look at the bottom, their perception of beef production, look at how those the positive perspectives decrease down to 35% nationally, and even less, 27% here in Colorado. So obviously, those are some things we need to think about. And as we do our programming, we definitely need to communicate more about beef production to help them understand. That's part of that social acceptance of our production practices that I talked about earlier. This chart shows we did not prompt them with any of these answers, but we asked them, what do you have concern with cattle production? What are your top concerns? And animal welfare is obviously the largest one of those concerns, followed by hormones, environment, and antibiotics. So when you see a lot of information coming out from the Beef Council, as we're trying to communicate to consumers about animal welfare and hormones, while it may not seem like it's a big thing to us as cattle producers, it's obviously top of mind with consumers. And that's why we do these studies, and we can see this, and we try to address that. We try to make sure that they understand in a better light. So that is it for me in this first section. I'll be happy to take any questions before we move on to the next portion of the program.
So far, we have no questions for you, Todd.
All right. Sounds good. I'll turn it over to Julie Moore. Julie, go ahead.
Okay, good morning. Thanks, Todd. So today I want to talk a little bit about some of our established programs, but also some of the newer things we're doing. So let me start with established. We have for over 20 years supported high school classes in how they are able to communicate and teach about beef, because many classes would never cook beef due to the price. And so over the years, it really has morphed. And just this past year, we were able to support 74 classrooms and just over 13,000 students. And the pictures show you a little bit of a story, because it's not just the metro schools that use it. Pritchett High School worked last year with their ag class and their cooking classes and fabricated out a full round, and then they learned how to cook it together. And some of the other classes, they did like this food truck project where they're in a program where they're learning more about getting ready for restaurants and being sous chefs, and just that next generation of people you're going to see in those restaurants that are feeding that large percentage of consumers. Another project we work with is the Todd Ag in the Classroom program. Oh,
I'm waiting for it to catch up.
okay.
Yep. Keep talking. It hasn't advanced yet.
So I'm pretty sure that's the next slide. Anyway, Ag in the Classroom is totally funded by donations, and many of you support it. And they are a 501c3, but they have the endorsement of the Department of Education. So they have an easier way to talk to classrooms. And we have partnered with them since the 90s when they were started. Every year we sponsor one reader that goes to the classrooms, and it can be either we rotate between nutrition, and we rotate and ranching or feedlots and just the beef story. So we do the whole life cycle. Every year, it's about 1,300 classrooms and 60,000 students who see that, as well as there's a summer program for teachers, which is amazing to be able to be out there. Any of you who've given tours on your facilities, just that aha moment when people see what you do and how they do it, and just the difference in what their understanding of the industry. And so there are these teacher programs that are done every year, and I always participate at least a couple days, and absolutely on the beef day, just to answer other questions. One of the new things, and they're always changing, is that like in schools, there's STEM. So everyone talks about STEM: science, technology, engineering, and math. And it is really the new way to look at science. And a lot of states, including Colorado, have adopted for their state science standards the NGSS, which is the Next Generation Science Standards. So the American Farm Bureau Foundation for Agriculture several years ago applied for funding through the Cattlemen's Beef Board to do these lessons and to host things with teachers, week-long lesson writing camps, let's call it a camp, where they go and they're on beef farms and ranches and feedlots and backgrounders, and they learn more about beef and then can write these lessons. The American Farm Bureau Foundation has held these now 5 times. And so where we fit in is we're going to be one of the train the trainer programs for going forward, because their staff can't be everywhere. And so we're getting started on that, where we would teach some of these NGSS standards while teaching beef lessons. In fact, we'll be presenting at the Colorado Science Conference on November 5th. The next slide actually shows you where these teachers have come from, these large corporate school districts, to learn more about beef. And so there's some amazing stories that have come out of that we could share with you in some videos as well. They're looking at hosting something in Denver in the future, so we'll have a Colorado viewpoint. Another thing that's kind of newer, so back in 2010, the Colorado Food System Advisory Council was created, and it was created at the same time as the Colorado Farm to School Task Force. Back then, I sat on the Farm to School Task Force, where we looked at just trying to have local products into schools, and it's a tough one for beef, as you all know, because of price, but we wanted to make sure all the doors are still open. So then the Colorado Food System Advisory Council was updated in 2019, and you might not have heard of them because they're just kind of an advisory council, but we've recently gone through strategic planning, and you'll start to hear more about it. There are 15 members on this council, and they're represented from all areas of the food industry, including some that are anti or promoting plant and cell-based alternatives to animal products. So the council also has a variety of working groups, and those have a variety of members on those as well. So I try to sit in and observe as many of those committee meetings as possible, just to always keep beef in the front of their mind, because there's some people with alternative opinions. And then lastly, I wanted to share with you about the Good Food Purchasing Program. So Nationally, the Good Food Purchasing Program provides a metric-based, flexible framework that encourages large institutions, so think hospitals, schools, cities, jails, to direct their buying power toward one of 5 core values. So local economies, environmental sustainability, a valued workforce, animal welfare, and nutrition. So the Good Food Purchasing Program is the first procurement model to support these values in equal measure. Denver has adopted the Good Food Purchasing Program, and they're going to use that framework to do their purchasing. And there are other parts of the state as well that are looking to follow those types of purchasing guidelines. The Colorado Beef Council observes, I attend these meetings just to understand how these efforts are going to affect beef consumption. So if we look at the next slide, it shows you those 5 core principles, and now they're pulling it in as well with racial equity, climate justice, and food sovereignty. So there's values and there's core principles. I just want to share with you the draft, and let me tell you, this is draft. They should be published later this fall. The final framework, the final kind of guidance. But if we look at the next 2 slides, this one is on environmental sustainability. So if you want to get points, and that's how this program works, if you want to get points under environmental sustainability, you're going to purchase 15% of your total food at level 1 or 5% at level 3 with these types of certifications. So that one, and then as well as number 2 would be reducing your carbon and water footprint. Thanks. And cheese, meat, poultry, and cheese purchases. So there are seafood regulations that go along with it. And it's just their way of kind of guiding. That's what they're doing. It's a metric-based, flexible framework to, in their eyes, purchase good food. If we look at the next one, it's the animal welfare, which looks very similar to that sustainability one, because in their eyes, they see many of these certification programs also certifying for sustainability. So again, we're back at purchasing 15% of egg, meat, and dairy if you get to level 1 number of points. And if you're at level 3, it's only 5%. So you're trying to get higher. And then number 2 is replacing 15% of total volume or of animal protein purchased with plant-based protein. And so this webinar that I watched last week from the Denver Food Purchasing Program, they challenged the members of the Good Food Purchasing Program about the total volume of animal protein. And they honestly said that it was quite the discussion as they worked through it. And there were absolutely those in the room who did not agree with number 2 and or were looking more at the beans, the legumes versus the alternative protein products. So there is an animal welfare committee in Denver. Dr. Jennifer Martin, the CSU Meat Extension Specialist, sits on that animal welfare committee. I've also observed those meetings just to stay on top of what's going on. I will say that due to the pandemic, the funding for the person running this for the city has been pulled. And so the organization is really operating at a low level. And we just, the Colorado Beef Council, just sit there and observe, because it's important to know how this is going to play into future purchases of beef products. And with that, I would take any questions you might have.
Doesn't look like there are any, Julie.
Okay, on to Kate.
All right. Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Thank you. My name is Kate Schulz, and I work as the consulting dietitian for the Colorado Beef Council. And today I'm just going to provide an overview for you of some past programming that we have done and a peek into some future programming as well. So next slide, please. My responsibility is really to deal with anything in regards to health wellness, nutrition. So a lot of the work that I do is around building relationships and networking with fellow medical professionals, physicians, nurse practitioners, nurses, fellow dietitians, dietetic interns, as well as dietetic internship directors. Next slide, please. And so I always like to present this to the groups I am working with as well as all of you, which is really the statement of principles regarding nutrition and health that we have adopted that states, there are about 9 right here, but the one that I like to highlight is that we will provide factual, scientifically supported information about beef to help consumers make informed choices about what they eat. Next slide, please. And so this last year, we participated at a state level in a national effort that came from NCBA in regards to the pediatric outreach, eating in the early years. So the 2020-2025 nutritional dietary guidelines were instrumental this year because they really were the first addition to provide authoritative guidance in the dietary guidelines for birth to age 2. And in those recommendations per the dietary guidelines, they specifically called out the need for increased amount of iron and zinc in this age group, and did specifically list beef as an exceptional food to get to receive iron and zinc. So we have done a lot of work in regards to this. We participated in a pediatric office outreach where we submitted toolkits and some information to pediatricians in regarding beef as a first food. And so some of the survey results can be found here on this slide, where it said that 48 or 45% of the respondents have already recommended beef, and 3/4 of the respondents are more likely to recommend beef as an early complementary food since receiving the program materials. So we've had some great results from this. We will continue to share beef as a first food and the eating in the early years information. We're also looking at doing more of a strength campaign with physicians later in this year as well. Next slide, please. So the last couple of years, Colorado has participated in the National Nurse Practitioners Conference. This is a national conference that's held in Keystone, Colorado. It has been in Keystone, I believe, for about 35 years. It's incredibly well attended in the month of July. And so we have exhibited for the past couple of years. That's the photo here on the left. So we have a display. It's always very interesting. People will come by and they'll be like, I like beef. Are you selling beef? And it really allows an opportunity for us to have a conversation with them about the resources that we have available so that they can confidently still recommend beef in a healthy diet. And so we provide all kinds of information and research for them, as well as the Strength of Field manual. They love swag, and so we have cutting boards and straws. Also here we did a build your own beef jerky trail mix, which was a big hit. And then in conjunction with that, NCBA sponsored a breakfast session where we brought in a speaker to talk about the importance of protein at breakfast. And so we served beef during the breakfast session. She tied that presentation nicely into the breakfast and into our recommendations as far as spreading protein out evenly throughout the day, the importance of starting your morning with a hearty breakfast, and it was incredibly well received. So we had great participation. Even though this conference has been going on for the last 35 years, there were about 350 new participants this year. So it's great to be able to get that information out to them. We were able to capture their contact information through them coming to our booth. So we now have a way to follow up with them with additional information as well, and are looking at additional opportunities next year to exhibit and also have a speaker. Next slide, please. So we work a lot with dietetic internship programs. There are 5 in the state, and We worked with these dietetic internship directors and dietetic interns during this time, really to be able to bring them information about beef, expose them to dietitians in the industry. And we had an opportunity last November to participate in a joint dietetic intern training for 25 dietetic interns from Metro State, Tri-County Health Department, and then Denver Children's. So we brought them to NCBA for a morning of learning where we did a Beef Nutrition 101 class, followed by how to communicate controversial topics. And so really it was incredibly well received as well. Dietitians are required to complete 1,200 hours in the areas of clinical, community, and food service. And so this was part of their community rotation where they were able to get a tour of NCBA, hear from myself, and then also Mary Lee Chin, who is a nationally known dietitian out of Denver, communicating how to communicate controversial topics. Next slide, please. And going back to the slide for dietetic intern training, we're continuing that programming again this year with UNC in October. So we will participate with their dietetic interns virtually, and then we're working with Metro State to do additional programming for them as well. So next slide. We also were able to host a beef industry farm tour this spring. So I sent it out to fellow dietitians, again, dietetic interns, medical professionals. We were able to enjoy a very windy morning, the end of April, really showcasing for them. We took them to the Oshners for, a cow-calf show cattle operation, and then to the Cooner Yard where they were able to go on a tour as well. And so 90% of the participants had never participated in a beef industry farm tour, and 100% of the participants indicated that the learning opportunity positively changed their perception of the beef industry. And so it was a wonderful opportunity there were people from medical professionals and then just kind of from all areas that came together to really learn and network. So we are looking at doing additional programming in regards to more tours as well. Next slide. And that is the end of my section. So I am also happy to answer any questions or provide any additional information.
Doesn't look like we have any questions, Kate.
Thank you so much.
All right, this is Todd again. I'm going to highlight international marketing, which is another element of programming that the Colorado Beef Council participates in with state checkoff dollars. So have had a lot of people question sometimes, why are we spending money promoting beef overseas? Well, when you think about it, 96% of the world's population lies outside of the United States. So if we were to look at trying to increase demand and increase consumption of beef, we really need to think about also looking at where all these hungry mouths are that are desiring our product. And then if you look at the area that receives most of our attention from Colorado promotion dollars, we focus a lot of what we do, specifically this year, exclusively in Japan, to the Asian markets. So if you were to look at that circle there on the right-hand side of the screen on the map, there's more people who live inside that circle than outside of it. That's why those markets are so important to us. That is where a lot of these, the potential to reach people with the great taste of U.S. beef lies. And why is that important? Why is international marketing important to us? I think I mentioned this earlier on at the beginning of the presentation. International marketing adds an incredible amount of value to the beef carcass. 2021, export value alone added about $407 per head of fed cattle harvested, which is incredible. It's huge. So that's why it's important. If you're to look at this next chart here, this shows over time from 2003 to where we are as of June of 2022, the dollar value of export value that is added to the beef carcass. So 2021, we were at 407. Right now in June, we were already at $477 per fed head. I thought this would be an interesting thing. We're going to look at both volume and then value just to identify where those markets are. And again, this is for US beef. So this is beef leaving the United States. We keep setting monthly records of over $1 billion sold to foreign markets. But you look here, Japan, Korea, China, and Mexico are our top 4. And right now, 2022, we're looking at 743,000 metric tons of product being sold, and that's up 6% from last year. If we looked at value now here, this is where we were talking value-wise. Or like I said, we're exporting over $1 billion a month the last 5 months now overseas, and that's incredible. So you see the countries shift a little bit down at the bottom there, but relatively, pretty much similar. But you see a highest value market is Korea right now, and again, that's up 40% from where we were last year. If you look at specifically Colorado, Colorado is the 4th largest beef exporting state. Of all the meat that's exported from Colorado, you can see this pie chart here. Beef represents 72%, pork 17%, poultry 4%, and then others 7%. So obviously, beef is key to the export market coming out of Colorado. Now, if you were to look at 2021 total numbers, we sold $1.3 billion of edible products out of Colorado to the international market. And these are our top 4 from Colorado. A little bit different than the order that you saw in those previous charts on the national level. But again, think of that value coming back into Colorado from exported beef. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about, real quickly, going back to our international product and the value. What that is you probably have heard this a lot, but it's really utilizing undervalued cuts. We're talking like the round, short plate, organ meats. That means like tongue, liver, kidney, things that in the United States would probably be sold at maybe a discount. But overseas, those are highly valued, part of their culture and part of their food, and so they're willing to pay top dollar for those products. So that's where that value comes in. Now, next, I'm going to talk a little bit about marketing and promotion programs. Some of our marketing elements that we do. If you look at consumer outreach, so we do a lot of Facebook, YouTube cooking demonstrations with Chef Jason Morse there at the bottom. He is the national, we've worked with him for many, many years, but recently, last several years, he has now become the national grilling expert for Ace Hardware nationally. So it's been great having this existing partnership with him. He has got a reach that not very many people do on social media. So we're able to utilize him giving cooking demonstrations, things like that. Look for those. We're doing those once a month now. During the pandemic, we did that weekly when people were closed up at home and looking for new ways to cook at home. So we were able to use him weekly. We also do a lot of digital and social media work. Again, part of that element of one of those issues that I highlighted at the beginning of the presentation of trying to influence social acceptance of our production practices. That could go anything from health to sustainability to just anything like that. So what we do is we try to push a lot of information and facts out through digital and social media. Some of the topics that we talk about are, how cattle are raised, talking about, especially during the pandemic, safe and healthy food supply. Again, a lot of cooking methods and recipes. That was kind of how the Checkoff, or one of the big things that Checkoff started with so many years ago, was recipes. Well, that's still a mix of what we do, but we're trying to communicate it in a different format now that better meets how consumers are receiving that information. And also sustainability, that's huge, as you could tell from the profile of Colorado consumers. But what we're doing is really building knowledge and trust. Sports marketing has become a big element of what we do. Of course, you've heard a lot of radio ads during Broncos and Rockies games that will continue to still do that. But we started a couple of years ago a new program with Winter Park, Steamboat Springs, and Telluride, where now digital screens are everywhere on a ski slope. You've got them in the lodges, you've got them in the restaurants, you've got them on the chairlifts themselves. What you see here in the top right, they're touch screens on the chairlifts. So you can check weather, you can check traffic conditions, you can check the ski slope conditions, how crowded different runs are. What we've been able to do is we've been able to access a little sliver of that screen, and we're the exclusive protein advertiser on those screens. So now while their attention is focused on that screen, they're looking at some of these hamburgers. That's what we did last 2 years, talking about burgers. And we also can talk about other elements of beef production in that as well. We tied that into everything on the ground, back in the lift lines, back in the lodges, and tied it into menu items in the restaurants. So last year we had 4.3 million impressions, and we realized a 43% increase in beef sales on each of these ski resorts. So that's something we continue to do. Also, the very popular team beef renting team. These runners have to go through a webinar where they learn about beef nutrition, beef production. They go out, they wear their team beef jerseys, and they run in races all around the state. We compensate them, partially compensate them for some of the team, the racing fees, the entrance fees. But it's fun to see them, and they're out there talking, and they run in big packs and groups, and they're very well recognized. As we kind of wrap up here, got about 10 minutes left. This is a quick video. What I wanted to highlight, part of our sports marketing program, is this is one of the first big national brand awareness campaigns that the beef industry has done in many, many years. We had the opportunity during the pandemic to sponsor through the Federation of State Beef Councils. That's a group that is represented by all the state beef councils to sponsor a NASCAR race the day before the Daytona 500. It's called the Beef It's What's for Dinner 300. And what you'll see is it's a pretty neat thing. There were 6 states that actually participated in the on-ground execution of the program. Colorado was one of them, but we have now done that 2 years. We have entered a contract again to do it for the 3rd year. But this is an amazing process. When you think of the exposure that NASCAR has globally, the reach that the beef industry had, and you'll see this in this short video here in a minute, was incredible. Hard to put numbers on the reach that it had. But what you were able to see is on the infield marketing program, and we interacted with the campers, the people who are out there grilling. We had a booth out in the front, right next to Coca-Cola and all these big racing companies. We were in the mix with all these big players. People loved seeing beef. So I'm going to play this video, and then we'll come back at the end. We'll have a couple minutes left over for some wrap-up question and answers.
Well, on behalf of the France family and the entire staff here at Daytona International Speedway, welcome to the World Center of Racing. So grab a burger and enjoy the race. Let's go!
On behalf of America's farmers and ranchers who work hard every day to produce beef for your dinner, it's my privilege to announce, drivers, start your engines.
Beef was back on track at the Daytona International Speedway for the Beef It's What's for Dinner 300. For the 2nd year, the Federation of State Beef Councils, on behalf of the Beef Checkoff, partnered with the Daytona International Speedway to sponsor the race one day ahead of the legendary Daytona 500.
super event. This is a great way for us to reach the people that are consuming our product.
It's tremendously exciting that here we are with our Checkoff program. We're back in the national televised network. A lot of reach, a lot of people that see this and hear this and see it on the internet follow up all through the year because they'll be talking about the Beef It's What's for Dinner 300.
In the days before the drivers took to the track, beef was in the spotlight on TV and radio stations nationwide as celebrity chef Josh Capon shared race day recipes with news media around the country.
Good morning, everybody. Get ready to start your engines. I got some shaved steak lettuce cups. These Asian flavors pair perfectly with the beef. And of course, being the 7-time champion of the Burger Bash, I had to give you guys a couple sliders. So we got a Southwestern slider with a green hatch chili mayo. For these recipes and so many more, head over to beefitswhatsfordinner.com.
Come on, this is beef. It's what's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But we also have this booth, so we're able to interact with the folks that are coming to the races. So we're handing out beef sliders. We're handing out spice packets for seasoning the steaks and burgers. But really, it's more about communicating with folks that are here, talking to them about how beef production works here in the U.S.
When you talk about the Beef It's What's for Dinner 300, all the folks coming here, all the social media that we're going to see, all the live television network we're going to see, it's just a tremendous opportunity to tell our story about how safe, healthful, just good tasting beef really is.
Hundreds of media were on site to cover the races at Daytona, and beef-loving chefs from the Texas Beef Council traveled in to put beef on the menu. And no doubt beef is truly a fan favorite at Daytona.
You see all those RVs out there? Everybody's grilling all day, all night, cooking up burgers, steak tacos. I mean, these people take their racing seriously, but they take their beef seriously.
Every night we've done burgers. Tonight we're doing steaks. Beef, it's what's for dinner.
Nobody's sitting down here tonight at Daytona. Here they come, racing back to the line.
Back on the track, 38 drivers raced in the Beef It's What's for Dinner 300, battling for a cooler full of tomahawk beef steaks and a trip to victory lane.
They're 2 and 3 wide behind him. Crossover, that's Austin Hill in the 21. Big crash, up and over. I believe Austin Hill's got this. And the leader, Austin Hill.
Race winner of the 40th running of the NASCAR Xfinity Series, Beef It's What's for Dinner 300. Fans, give it up for Austin Hill, race winner of Daytona.
I'd like to present you, first of all, with a hat, so to commemorate that. It's Beef It's What's for Dinner. We've also got a belt buckle for you here. And on behalf of the over 800,000 beef ranchers and farmers of America, much congratulations to you.
Thanks a lot.
With all the different elements, the Beef 300 promotion reached the largest ever audience for a Checkoff funded event and posted a big win for beef.
So that wraps up the majority of our presentation there. Again, we just thank you guys for the opportunity to speak at your first of your fall webinar series. And I hope that what we've been able to share with you a little bit today helps provide some insight into what your Checkoff dollars are doing. They're being put to good work. Demand is at a 33-year high. Would like to think that the Beef Checkoff has at least been a part of that. I know we can't claim it all, but I think it's been a big part of that. And I think that's something, I hope that it's something that you can be proud of, and knowing that that the hard work that you all do and the Checkoff dollars that we pay into the system are providing some good results for the industry. I'd like to take any questions, or if there's any thoughts or questions, we'd be happy to take the last few minutes that we have to address those.
Doesn't look like we have any questions. Oh, we just have Brian Schiller just said, keep up the great work, Todd.
Great.
And then Nicole said, thank you for sharing. Good info. This meant.
Good deal. I couldn't do it without a great staff. Really value the work that Julie and Kate both do. And then also Nita Howard is our compliance and person here. And she does a great job working with feed yards and sale barns and dairies and making sure that everything is all in line there. So again, we really appreciate it. We appreciate the partnership with the industry, with CLA. And your members, if there's any questions that you have, be sure to reach out. One of the areas I think on our website that you may want to check out is our website is cobeef.com, and go to the Cattleman's Corner tab. There's a lot of resources there, a lot of things that you can download, things that you can share on social media. There's a million things that you can do there. So I think that would be important for you to check out. And also, if you have questions, if you need to see anything, feel free to reach out to us through the email address that you can get on our website. Or as well, I'll throw my email out there if you need that. It's Todd, TODD, @cobeef.com. And we'd be happy to share any of these slides with you or answer any questions that you've got.
Todd, we have a comment from Jordan Levi that says, "Thank you for running one of the best state checkoff programs in the land."
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Jordan. I look at here, I've got 2 minutes. So put a promo in here for this. We've also helped help partner with Beef Sticks for Backpacks program in providing what we've done is just helped advertise it, promote it, and get some eyes on it. But it's been a great partnership throughout the entire beef industry within Colorado, helping get protein sticks out to food insecure kids. And I know Jordan and his crew has had a big part of that. So we're also proud to play a part in that. But thanks everybody for your support. Let us know if we can ever help or answer any questions. If you need us to come speak at a group or whatever, just let us know. We're always available.
Thank you, Todd. Both of those, that website link and then also Todd's email, are in the chat if anybody wants it. But Jessica, do we have anything else? All right, with that.
No, Brittany, sorry about that.
What'd you have to say, Jessica?
I just said I think we're good to go. It looks like Zach's coming on to close things out.
Perfect.
Thanks again, Todd, and thanks to all the participants. And thank you to our valued speakers and experts in the field. Appreciate you all participating today.
Thanks, Zach.